Hi, welcome back. On my screen is a powerful new tool called the Structure Map. I break this tool down in detail in my book, Designed to Scale. You should watch this video if you're the CEO or a senior executive of an expansion stage company and you're trying to understand the right new structure to scale your company for the next stage of growth. Background of this tool is kind of interesting. What had happened is in my organizational structure design consulting practice at Organizational Physics, found myself in like three hard client engagements back to back to back. And what was happening was I was having a hard time getting a leadership team to really understand and apply the six rules of structure. Happens once, it's interesting. Two, it's concerning. Three, it's a pattern. So I said, okay, how do I go back to the drawing board and come up with a way that's interactive and allows the leadership team to apply the six rules of structure and come up with the right structure for the next stage of business growth? And out of that pain came this tool, and it looks simple. It's actually pretty profound the more you study it. And so I want to give you a sense for how it works in this video. Now, context here, let's say that rather than doing a structure, you were an artist and you're going to go paint an oil piece master work, okay? Well, before you put paint to canvas, you'd actually have a sketchbook, right? Pencil, and you're doodling and you're coming up with different ideas and things like that. This is the sketchbook, okay? This is not your end structure, but it does three things very well. One, it'll reveal to you when you use the tool where you have structural breakdowns happening in your current structure and why, like what's causing those breakdowns. The second thing it'll do is it'll act as a forcing function to think through what is the right structure for the next stage of business growth. And then the third benefit you won't appreciate until a little later, but if as you use this with your team, it'll actually create a shared language. It's very powerful to have very pointed structural decisions, about trade-offs. Where should a given function go? Should it go to sales? Should it go to marketing? That kind of thing, and why. So those are three big advantages you can get by understanding and using this tool. So what I want you to notice right away is that there are four quadrants, one, two, three, four. And the idea is that we're going to place the major functions of your business into their one correct quadrant. And every function in your business can only reside in one quadrant. Quadrant one is where we'll place functions that must be short range oriented and they must keep their effectiveness high. Effectiveness is to do the right thing no matter what. It requires flexibility, change, adaptation, drive, etc. Fundamentally, functions that we put into quadrant one should wake up in the morning and say, okay, how do I do the right thing to get customers? Now, that could be a new sale or could be a repeat order. It doesn't matter. What's the right thing to do to get a customer today? Quadrant two functions are those that are shorter range oriented and they have to keep their efficiency higher. Efficiency means to do things in the right way, repeatable way, a quality way, a scalable way. Functions that go into quadrant two should get up in the morning and say, okay, how do I do things in the right way for customers? And the kicker here is that customers are external and internal. So notice the top half of this four quadrant matrix are shorter range oriented. Now quadrant three is longer range oriented, and it also must keep its effectiveness high. And functions that reside here, when they get up in the morning, they got to say, okay, how do I do the right thing for the company? Quadrant four functions also have to keep a longer range orientation, meaning they can't fall prey to short range pressure. But these functions in quadrant four must keep their efficiency higher. Okay, again, repeatable, quality, control, etc. Fundamentally, they need to get up in the morning and think, okay, how do I keep this company out of harm? So we're going to place the major functions of your business into their one correct quadrant. Now I'm going to start with four easy examples and then show you some more interesting examples to kind of tease out how this map works and why it can be so useful. So here to the left of the structure map, I have some yellow post-it notes, and on this post-it note, I've written the function sales. Okay, so what quadrant would you place sales into? One, two, three, or four? That's right, quadrant one. Do the right thing to get customers. Easy peasy. What about strategy? Well, strategy is fundamentally about doing the right thing for the company over time, so it goes to quadrant three. What about operations? Okay, fundamentally, that's a quadrant two function because it has to be shorter range, right? It's under short range pressure to meet customer and business needs. It must keep its efficiency high, and it's got to figure out how to do things in the right way, a repeatable way for customers. Last example here of the easy ones is legal. That's right. Keep the company out of harm. Quadrant 4. Okay. I'm not worried that this is neat. Just notice I'm using functional names. I'm not using titles. I'm not using individual people names. Okay. Now let's get to something more interesting. Let's lay in marketing. So notice that marketing is not easy. It's not actually possible to place in one quadrant and one quadrant only. And so that tells you that there's something going on there. One, marketing is a loaded term. If you can't fit a function cleanly into one quadrant, it tells you that you're either using a loaded term and there's unclear definitions for you and for others, or there's more than one function buried under the term marketing. And that's certainly the case here. So if you think about marketing, there's a short range demand generation function, which is about getting leads, driving qualified leads for sales close, right? That goes to quadrant 1. But there's also a strategic marketing function for brand development, brand strategy, brand architecture, that kind of thing, right? So you typically call that brand marketing and comms. Don't let thoughts of like, well, how will our head of marketing feel about splitting up demand gen from brand marketing? Don't go there. You're not talking about people. We're talking about the functions that this business must perform to execute on its growth strategy. Another example, product, right? Very loaded term. There's clearly product strategy and innovation, R&D, and there's also, though, it needs to be a shorter range product management function that acts as a linchpin role. It helps to translate, prioritize, coordinate product features, maintain the product roadmap. Its clients include not only external customers, but internal ones too, right? Sales is a customer, engineering is a customer, product innovation is a customer, strategy is a customer. Product management is a lot of different customers, both inside and outside the business, and their job is to be able to translate, prioritize, and coordinate new feature releases. Here's a loaded term, finance, right? Same concept. Can't fit it cleanly into one quadrant. It's telling you, think more clearly, think more systematically. I think there's at least two finance functions. One is strategic finance, long range capital deployment, investor relations, board management support, financial analysis, that kind of thing. But then there's also a financial function around keeping the company out of harm, the controller function, profit control, board reports, tax reporting, that kind of thing. One is to keep the company out of the harm, the other is to do the right thing for the company, deploying capital, supporting mergers and acquisitions, that kind of thing. Here's a loaded term, people. Same concept, doesn't fit, break it apart until it does. For me, there's at least a culture and talent function, which is about long range effectiveness for the company, recruiting, onboarding, cultural reinforcement, performance management, support, coaching, that kind of thing. Then there's a function called HR admin, which is all about the liability prevention side of people. Are people your greatest asset or your greatest liability? It depends which quadrant you're coming from, because they're clearly both, right? It seems simple, but what's happening here is it's kind of forcing me to think more systematically about my structural choices. Notice that I'm not designing around people. I'm not designing for internal business needs. I'm designing for what this business needs to energize in order to execute on its growth strategy. Now, again, this is a sketchbook. It doesn't look very sexy. It's not designed to. It doesn't even need to be clean or neat. It's just helping you to think critically. Now, what happens, again, the three advantages of doing this is, one, it's going to show you where you might have current structural flaws in your organization now. And if you do have those flaws, it's going to lead to some very predictable negative ramifications. Two, it's going to force you to think more systematically to design your business to scale. And three, it's going to create a powerful language to use with you and your team to have more pointed structural decisions. Now, I want to show you a structure. Quadrant 1 functions are in Quadrant 1. Quadrant 2 functions are in Quadrant 2. Quadrant 3 functions are in Quadrant 3. Quadrant 4 functions are in Quadrant 4. Same concept, Quadrant 1, Quadrant 2, Quadrant 3, Quadrant 4. So what this is doing is creating a very powerful language, because I've thought upwards from first principles to design a new growth structure. And now I have a language I can use to talk with my team, those who understand it. So we can say, hey, what functions do we need in Quadrant 1? Or, hey, we need a new function called data and analytics. Where should it go? Should it go in Quadrant 3, Quadrant 2, Quadrant 1, or where, right? by having this map and this shared language with the team, it can really hone in the conversation very quickly to get the right structure. So very powerful. Okay, so what I did in this video, I shared with you a 4-quadrant tool called the structure map, which in my book, Designed to Scale, it guides you through step by step. So if you like this way of thinking and this approach, I highly recommend you get that book because it'll take you step by step through it and answer most of your questions. And by using this way of thinking, guaranteed, it's going to create a more resilient, scalable, agile structure that allows you to capture the external market opportunity. This is a structure map. Thanks for your time.